Hello, my name is Anna. I'm an artist. I'm originally from Bloomington, Indiana, and I recently just moved to Asheville, North Carolina. I just finished, while I was still in Bloomington, my first big outdoor mural project, and so I wanted to create a video explaining the process of how I did that. So throughout this video, I'm going to timestamp everything, but I'm going to go through 10 different parts. The first being how I created the design. Number 2, things to look for when you're beginning a mural at the site and questions to ask early on. Number 3 is I'll be going through my entire supply list of everything I needed to complete the project. Number 4, how I prepped the wall to get it ready for a strong foundation to get started with painting. And then number 5 was how I got the design on the wall. There's different methods with that, and I'll share the ones I used. Number 6 is how and where I stored the materials during the project without a studio. And then number 7, hiring help. Number 8, how I priced this project. Number 9, thoughts and suggestions I have for future murals. And then number 10, I'll just be sharing what my favorite parts of this project were. The first part is about how I created the design. So 2 parts to that. One, like how we actually came up with that particular design was that the dentist office that hired me, they are a family in town I grew up going to that dentist, and then also I've been family friends with them. So I've known them on a personal level. And I wanted to make something meaningful to them while also doing something that really ties in the community, because they definitely contribute to the community a lot. And so their main guidance was non-controversial, and they want the design to be uplifting, and they're very positive people. They are familiar with my artwork, which tends to be pretty colorful. And so I wanted to celebrate them, and so they have a Greek heritage, and so I was taking in that element. And then with the community element and the location of the mural being right next to campus where there's a lot of foot traffic, there's a lot of students or people that live in the Bryan Park neighborhood behind there coming through, and there's a coffee shop, so there's just a lot going on right there, especially when people are starting the day. So I was thinking of a way that makes it feel like at home for the students, something that feels like it's a key part of, just a hominess and a community aspect. And so I did a Greek neighborhood scene, and then that also allowed me to keep the design a little bit more simple, since it was an 1,100 square foot wall, and I hadn't painted at that size before. So I was kind of making flatter objects, and nothing had to be perfectly symmetrical, since the design was different as it carried on. And then the making sure that people understood that it was a Greek scene. I wanted to involve a beach that had the water and the sun, which brought us to the words "follow the sun," very uplifting. And then there's a little mountainscape in the background, and you can feel like you're in Mykonos. And the plants in the artwork also represented different family members, and having natural elements like the plants and the water and the sun really allowed me to split up the wall, because it's a really, really wide wall, and not all designs would work really effectively on that. So that was the thought process behind that. And then in terms of how I actually shared and got everyone on board with the design, was I use Procreate. It's an app on my iPad, and that allowed me to take a picture of the mural wall and then draw on top of it, so we can make sure everything would actually work on there. And that's how we got started. So next, number 2 is things to look for at the site. That for me was looking for access to water. If you're power washing the wall, you'll need access to water, and also just to be able to fill water dishes for your brushes throughout the day. And then the nearest electrical outlet, I had rented a lift, so that was really important because I had to charge that every night. But also if I painted into the evening and needed a construction light to be able to see what I was painting, I needed to be able to plug that in. And then the last thing that I would note is if there's any signage on the wall, murals can last a really long time. And so if there's like a vendor that's renting a unit in the building that has a sign but probably won't be there for too long, just communicating with your client so that you guys know which signs to make sure that the design continues under, and then which ones don't matter. So for us, it was all of them. They all needed to go. So this next part is the supply list. And these are not all things that I bought. Some of them I rented, some of them I did purchase, and then also just borrowed from people, because a lot of people have things like this in their garage. So I'll just go through them first. I got caulking. I got foam backer rod for behind the caulking. Like if there's a big crack, you can put that in there and then use the caulking on top of it and smooth it out with your fingers. And then primer, lots of primer. We used over 5 gallons. And then paint, rollers, brushes. For rollers, the thicker the fluff, which is called the nap. You use the thicker the nap for the rougher the surface. And then also with like paint and primers and stuff, the higher quality stuff you get, the less coats you need to do. And that is just worth it in the end because you want it to last a long time and keep the color and not yellow and whatnot. And then I had a drop cloth for like when I would open cans or mix paint on top of in case I would spill. And then also I had a drop cloth under me when I was painting for certain parts so that in case there are any drips. And then I also got a bin from a garage sale that had a lid. So that was really great to have in my car so I could put wet paint in there, things I wanted to cover to keep wet. Or I would, if I didn't have time to clean everything, I would just put it in there with water in it. And then I'd be able to clean everything at the end of the day. Frog tape, which is a brand of painter's tape, but it works really well and you can get different kinds for different textures of the wall. Chalk. I used a projector, but you do not have to. If you're going to be using spray paint, I would strongly suggest getting like a respirator mask and goggles because the chemicals in that are no joke. I get strep throat every single time I use spray paint if I don't protect myself. And then a ladder. I borrowed a ladder, but then I also rented a lift, and I found that that was very valuable and very worth it because it made me feel more stable. I was able to paint more efficiently. Also, the wall was above 16 feet, so it was kind of just necessary, especially because I was out there alone a lot. And then in terms of a lift, you don't always need a place to store it. The place I rented from said I could store it outside, but what I realized later on is that you're supposed to take the control panel home. I knew how to lock it so people couldn't get it going, but I needed to take the control panel inside because it's like super sensitive to temperature change. And so I came out one day and it wasn't going. So I had to call for some help. So that's just something you think about. And then extension cords was the next part on the list. The power outlet was on a separate building, and so I used 150 feet worth of extension cords. And then also a construction light if you're going to be painting beyond when the sun goes down. So that's the whole list. And again, you don't need to buy all of these things. And with like paint with paint, if there's any extra, you can always use it for something else. And then the like rollers and brushes, if you take good care of them, you can use them many times. And as for where to get a lot of these paint supplies, I went to the local Bloomington Paint and Wallpaper, but most paint stores that you go to have the option of a contractor account, which can give you a really great discount. So most places I've gone and had a contractor account opened, it's like 20% off everything you buy there. So that's super helpful to keep in mind. And then also this particular paint store was able to create like the exact formula of the color I wanted. So if they didn't have as neon of colors as I was hoping for, because I was doing a really bright design, I could bring in a sample and then they could go off of that and create the exact color I wanted, and then they kept it on file, so then throughout the project, if I ran out of that color, they could just make it for me really quickly. So that's really good to know. So number 4 is about prepping the wall. As I've talked to other artists, usually muralists aren't responsible for prepping the wall, like cleaning it and even getting the first layer of priming done. But I was, and I'm glad I was, because it gave me access to understanding what the whole process is. And if thinking through, like, if I want to offer all of that in the future or what I want to request from the client. But I'll just explain everything I did. First was taking out weeds. There was a bunch of weeds that were growing right up against the wall. So cleared all of those out, removed signage, power washing. I hired a power washer. And that's a really important step, because if there's any peeling paint, that's just going to keep peeling. So you just need to get it stripped and as flat as possible. And then also you don't want any dirt. Like I made the mistake of, well, I didn't really mean to, but I wasn't able to get the sign down until after the power washer came. And so there was dirt under the sign. And then it's just pretty difficult to get dirt off of a wall. And it was also like right at the top, like 18-foot point of the wall. So, it's important to get everything off and then clean it so it's all clean, because paint won't stick if there's dirt, and then your mural doesn't last very long and it starts peeling very easily. The next part was filling the big holes and caulking. So there was some big like divots, and so that's where I would use the foam backer rod if there was like kind of nothing behind it and needed to get that going, so then the caulking doesn't just go into the abyss. And then we caulked around anywhere there was bigger cracks, and then you can just smooth it in with your finger. And then we went back and started cutting, which is a painter's term for painting like edges or behind things before doing like the smoother, bigger finish with the roller. So we cut behind like the pipes and wires and electrical boxes. And then also there's a few areas, there's bigger divots around the cinder block where we cut those first, so then when we're rolling we don't miss getting into those cracks. And then it was time to prime the whole thing. So we did that, and sometimes they suggest like 2 coats of that. Since the wall was already pretty white, and I had quality primer, we only did 1 coat of it. So number 5 is how I got the design on the wall. So since I was working on like a concrete cinder block wall, I could see all of the lines around each block. And so I just measured based off that. So when I drew the design on Procreate, I just lowered the opacity so I could see all of those lines. And then I would use tape or chalk or something to mark where certain things were starting. So I'd be like, the sun is 11 blocks up, or the bike is 6 blocks long. And so that was super helpful in keeping things accurate and balanced like I was intending the design. And then I also used the projector for the letters, the follow the sun, because that was the most efficient way that I could come up with doing it. And it actually really didn't take that long to do. So that was really, really helpful. Okay, number 6 is about storage of materials during the project. I didn't have a studio space or somewhere I could put everything, so I was just doing it out of my car. I had everything I needed, put some drop cloths down to protect things. Also, didn't always do that, but I would suggest that. And then I was able to put like the ladder on top of my car if I needed to move it around. But usually I left the ladder at the site, and I just took a bike lock and connected it to one of the posts. And then along with keeping things in my car, since there wasn't anywhere to wash things out at the site, I just had a bin in my car, and I would fill that up with like a quarter the way full with water, and then I'd put my wet brushes or messy trays in there, and then I'd clean it out when I got home every night. And then also a note with acrylic paint, you don't want to wash that down your drain, so I would let that sit out and dry, and then you can just peel it off and throw it away. Number 7 is about hiring help. So when I started this, I was intending on doing it all alone, and even the client was like, you aren't you aren't going to do this all on your own, are you? Like, this is a very large wall. And so I started getting excited about friends I could hire to help me out. Some of them artists, some of them would consider themselves not artists. But I would just chalk things out for them and then they could fill it in. And it was just really fun to do the project with people and share that together. And we're like, we're making our mark on the town. So it's just a fun thing to share that experience with other people. I also involved some kids that I've babysat in the past. And they love making art with me. And so it was really fun to have them come and they got to put their mark on the wall. And then I had my niece and nephew come by.
This is a kind of animal.
And they were looking at it while I was in the process. So it's just cool because it makes it all a more meaningful, fun thing. And then when other people walk by it, if they were involved, that's just a fun thing to be able to say and to have had the experience of doing. So hire your friends and pay your friends. Pay your friends. Hang with your friends and pay your friends, So their time's valuable and it was fun to do as a group. So we're on number 8 now, which is how I priced this. I'm not sure if I would do it the same way again, but I just want to be transparent with how I did it. Since it was my first big outdoor project like this, I've never done one that would take this long or be this extensive and have such expensive materials. So I did time plus materials, so my hourly rate, and then any materials on top of that were the responsibility of the client, but I would buy them and I just kept receipts and organization of all that stuff. So that's how I did it, and I'm learning that a lot of muralists do it by square foot. So they'll have a rate per square foot, and that rate goes up depending on the texture of the wall. So if it's more rough, it's more expensive because it's harder to work with, and you usually have to go over it more, and it's just not as simple as drywall. Okay, number 9 is thoughts and suggestions for future murals. I'm really glad I documented most of my process because it's really fun to look back on, and for content online, I can use it. For this video, I can share and explain with more detail and context. And then also for your portfolio, it's really awesome. When another suggestion would be to document hours day of. I would get a little behind and then be how many hours was I out there that day, and have to go back to text messages and look at timestamps and stuff. So just a reminder to keep track of your hours when you're doing a project so you have context in the future. And then I also suggest getting professional photos done for your portfolio and just to have and to celebrate. And also, who knows what's going to happen in the future. So it's nice to have a documented, nice photo of the finished product. Something that came up after I finished was they were going to repave the lot. And when repaving's going on and stuff, usually there can be splatter or different things can happen. Thankfully, this company did a really great job. But it still took off at least 2 inches of the design. And I painted right to the bottom. I put my signature close to the bottom and had a cat sitting right on the ground, pots on the ground. So that's just something to think about in the future. I probably won't put details so close to the bottom in case natural things like that happen over time. And then also the weeds may grow back a little bit. So that's just something to think about. And then another thing was I was talking to different artists about how to handle the potential of graffiti artists coming in and tagging on top of your design and whatnot. And so I learned that often muralists will avoid doing a lot of details in the bottom 8 feet because graffiti people are usually just on the ground vandalizing. And so that's just something to think about, of using more simple shapes towards the bottom and then more details up high. I know that's not always possible, but I just wanted to note it. And then the last thing is the conversation around using an anti-graffiti sealant. I originally, as soon as I learned that was a thing, I was oh, this is probably the best. It's very valuable to use. And then as I started talking to people, it seems a lot of mural artists don't actually use that, and they would suggest the site getting a camera to scare off people who are going to vandalize, or you can even do a fake camera just to scare them off, and then you don't have to pay for surveillance. But the issues with anti-graffiti sealant is that it's expensive. Like if someone does do something on it and then you can power wash off the vandalism, and then it will still, like, your design will be okay for right then, but then you'll have to do another coat of the anti-graffiti sealant. So then it just like keeps racking up, because you kind of do just have to come back and touch it up, when maybe you could have just had the artist touch it up anyways without needing to also power wash and buy more of the product. And then also it's known to yellow, but that's no good. And most of my design was very white, so I decided against that. And I'm also aware that I don't know all the different brands of anti-graffiti sealants, so I may change my mind, but that's just a conversation worth having. So yeah. So the last part I wanted to go over is my favorite parts, my highlights of this project. And for me, it was definitely the community aspect. I really enjoyed doing this with other people and hiring my friends, and also just like getting to know a lot of the regulars that walked by, students or people that just live nearby, and I worked on the project for over a month, so I got to see people start classes and hear different things, and also got people's mostly encouraging comments about the wall. And it was just fun to hear what people's favorite parts were. And then I'm a big fan of the coffee shop right next door to the dentist office, called Crumble Coffee, and they're like family, so I was really enjoying like starting my day going there, and I would come in there for breaks from the heat and stuff. And then, just involving people. So I involved the kids I babysat, and my niece and nephew came by, and I got to take them up on the lift, which was really sweet. And is there anything else I wanted to say? Oh, it's just more people things. I was gonna say I'm becoming friends with the tenants in the building and whatnot. So I think I realized how much I love mixing design with community. So that was a highlight for me. And that wraps up my video. I hope this was helpful, and feel free to ask more questions if I missed anything. This was a really cool experience, and I was very empowered problem solving and working through things that originally intimidated me a little bit. So it was a really cool experience, and I'm excited to paint more murals in the future. That is all I have, so thank you for watching. You can follow and keep up with my artwork journey and my creative process on Instagram at Anna G. McCoy, and I'll be having some more projects coming out soon.